I'm walking at the same park also with one of my older dogs. I say older. He's older than the puppy, but he's only 14 months. So he's still quite a young dog. And we're working on a few different things than I was with the little puppy. I'm still using the long line, the 20-foot lead. This one, Sasuke, he is a little more prone to run to the end of the leash because he feels independent, farther away than 20 feet. He doesn't reach a state of maybe insecurity at that distance like the 5-month-old puppy does. So he is going out to the end of the line more often, and either I stop and go the other direction if he's acting like he wants to just do his own thing without me, without acknowledging that I'm part of this pair, part of this team. Or I might just stand still when he gets to the end of the line. But again, the reason I'm doing it with a long line instead of a 6-foot leash is if this dog wants to explore independently at 20 feet away from me, I guarantee that at 6 feet away, he's just going to be like, oh, why are you this anchor at the end of my life when I want to see things? And I don't want to get into a contest with him very often. I'm really only going to get into a sort of a contest from his perspective with him if he decides to really just take off to the end of the line. And that's not going to happen that often. So we're not going to have a frustrating series of interactions about how close is too close. How far is too far? And is the leash tight or is the leash loose? It's just not going to come up very often. But since he's a little older, it is starting to come up. So that means I can start to give him some lessons about why that doesn't benefit him, getting to the end of the leash, making the leash tight, pulling, yanking, any of those things. So that starts to get me closer to a future where I can walk on a loose leash, even if it's shorter, because that's the habit. Or it also gets us closer to an eventuality where we can have off-leash. Maybe, potentially, because he's learning how to act without feeling tension on the leash. Dogs are masters at being able to tell the difference between a loose leash, a little bit tight leash, and a very tight leash. And so the biggest mistake probably that most people make in trying to transition their dog to off-lead time is to do it too soon and to do it when the difference between on-leash and off-leash is just way too obvious to your dog. So then when that happens, he starts following rules when he knows they can be enforced, i.e. when the leash is on, and blowing off commands like recalls or sit or down or anything like that when there's no leash and he knows that there's nothing you can do about it if he doesn't do what you ask. It's a little bit like when the speed limit is 70 and there's not a speed trap in sight and everybody's doing 85 or somebody's doing 85. But if the speed limit is 70 and there's a policeman who's also traveling at speed, nobody is going to be speeding that knows that that policeman is there. They're all going to obey the rules. Now, if there were enough police cars to be on the road so that we could pretty much count on at any given time being seen and being ticketed or fined for speeding, we would just get in the habit of not doing it. And then it would just become a habit in those places to not do it at all. And that's kind of what we're trying to get at with the leash training, especially if you have any goals or thoughts towards off-leash training. You have to create a habit that is so rock solid that the dog isn't going to really notice the difference between on-lead and off-lead. That's pretty challenging. But if your goal is to have some off-leash control of your dog, it is possible. Just have to put in the time to build the habit. And you really have to do it if you have any thought of going off-leash with your dog, because it's a huge responsibility to take that leash off. We want them to have fun. We want them to explore their world and their life. But once that leash is off, if they are not under complete voice control, it can seem like, oh, what could go wrong here? There's no one here. What could go wrong here? There's no cars. What could go wrong here? There could be a helicopter fly overhead. That just happened to me 5 minutes ago while I was walking the puppy. And if I didn't have the leash on him, he would now be somewhere in this state park and I wouldn't be able to find him. It could be a car backfiring. It could be people suddenly come by on a bike, or a motorcycle could go by. Anything that could startle the dog. Or maybe there's a deer, or there's squirrels, or maybe your dog really loves birds and they fly overhead and your dog goes off and chases them. Once they're off the leash, you cannot keep them safe. So that's why it's so important that if you take them off the leash, you have full voice control over them. And if you don't, you need to be practicing someplace like a tennis court that's actually fenced in, so that, again, the dog doesn't learn that sometimes he has to listen to what you say and sometimes he doesn't. This ended up being a little bit more of a soapbox talk than I really intended, but it's so important. And I have been involved with trying to catch dogs that were lost, find them, figure out what happened to them, where they went, get them reunited back home. And it is heartbreaking sometimes. And it is heart aching the whole time. And I've done it enough that I don't want that to be my dog. And I don't want it to be your dog either. So if I can give you some pointers and some tips and instill in you the importance at the bottom of my heart that I feel about this, then I can help you get to that place where you can have that free life and free lifestyle with your dog. Sasuke's finally stopped pulling now. He's just looking around. He's taking everything in, but he's doing it close enough to me for the leash not to get tight. And he's starting to learn that this is a good distance to be and that we can enjoy our time at the park together without it being a contest. All right, everybody. I'll talk to you again soon on the next walk. Take care.